Dealing with a single supernatural entity is hard enough, but what if that entity is a cross between two different ones? Well, that's what we will be facing today as we go up against a witch's ghost. From controlling our friends like puppets, to electronic manipulations, and to simply wielding a blade, this ghost witch will be quite the threat. If we want to beat this threat, we will have to find her first, but the title tells us to head outside to hunt her down as she came from the woods. Our story begins on the final day of a camp, specifically at Camp Briarbrook. The young kids there are preparing for a play they plan to put on, while the teenaged and very responsible camp counselors prepare for a post-camp end of summer party. What could go wrong? One of the camp runners, Sean, is showing his disappointment to his brother and other camp assistant Peter for planning to do something that night. We will later learn that this something is a ritual that supposedly summons a dead witch. Peter doesn't take anything he tells him seriously though, and I don't blame him. Sean acts sincere but never stresses what the dangers could actually be. And despite knowing others are participating in this event, he doesn't warn or try to stop any of the others. However, if he's that concerned, he should probably at least tell the camp runner Heather, who also happens to be their mother. Seems this is a family-run business. Most everyone is in attendance at the campers' play, and we are introduced to the other counselors. Besides Peter, there is his girlfriend Lauren, who's a kind-hearted marksman. There's his friend Danny, a shy guy who's working up the courage to ask out Counselor Kelly on this final night at camp. The deadbeat dirtbag Dylan, along with Ben, the guy he likes to pick on and mess with. And the last three members are Veronica, Mike, and Ashley. They are all treated to a speech from the camp founder Gilbert, who is Peter's granddad as well as Heather's father, for the closing ceremony. And with that, we should now know all of our future victims. After Heather makes sure every camper is on the bus for home, Sean drives them all back to civilization, while Grandpa Gilbert also heads home in his truck. All of the other counselors go to the after party to get wasted. Ashley and Ben head out at the start though to finish breaking down the bunks, informing others that pizza should be on its way. Peter is upset that they won't be participating in tonight's ritual because of their chores, so Ashley appeases him by pricking her finger real quick. Apparently, it is a camp tradition to try and summon the Briarbrook witch known as Agatha, a nurse whose medical practice started involving blood magic, so she was chased from camp where she accidentally died while fleeing. Afterwards, the kids she treated started chanting "Eternal Life," and this somehow allows her to be summoned back to the land of the living if you chant her name Bloody Mary style. Not sure why you would ever want to do that though, but each year for the last 10 years they have tried and failed. However, for this year, Peter has decided that if you're injured, that would give the nurse something to heal, so she will come back for sure. Peter has everyone stab themselves with a needle and say the witch's name, and after a fake-out jump scare by Dylan, they all give up and go to the beach. A bit anticlimactic. However, maybe it worked better than expected, as we now cut to Sean, whose bus has overheated and broken down, leaving him and the camper kids stranded. Suddenly, the kids start acting very strange and all run off while he is working on the engine. Sean runs to the nearest store outside of town, which is closed, but he uses the payphone there to call for his granddad and tell him that Pete has performed the ritual. Guess part of summoning Agatha is her taking over the minds of younglings. Either way, at least Grandpa is on his way. Let's hope he knows how to stop whatever is about to happen. Back at the camp's beach, Danny finally decides to make his move on Kelly, who is trying and failing at skipping rocks on the lake. Everything is going well at first, until he misreads the situation and goes in for an unreciprocated kiss. Kelly rejects him, which he takes pretty hard. So in response, he takes a rock and smashes it pretty hard upside her head multiple times, before throwing her limp body into the campfire face first. Peter and Veronica try to stop Danny, but the dude seems extra strong as he throws them off with ease. It's Mike who is able to put a stop to his attack, but only by stabbing him a couple times with a knife. In shock, they all run to the mess hall to report what happened to the head counselor, who in turn attempts to call the cops. However, when Heather makes the call, the phone just explodes in her ear. She's okay, but injured, as everyone tries to figure out what to do next, since that is the only phone in the camp. They decide they have to rescue Ben and Ashley, who are still out there working, and to just hold out for Sean, who is due back with the bus within the hour. Too bad we know that isn't going to happen. But wait, rescue the two members from what, exactly? As far as everyone here knows, Danny just killed someone, and now he's dead too. There isn't anything to rescue anyone from anymore. But alright, strange decisions aside, Lauren heads off to get medical supplies for Heather's ear. Peter goes to use the intercom to call for the two unaccounted-for counselors, while Mike, Veronica, and Dylan all head out to find them in case that doesn't work, and to check that Danny is actually dead. Now at least that decision is a smart idea, but they should have just double-tapped while they had the chance before heading back to camp. In fact, let's review all of the choices made so far to see what could have been done better. First off, as stated on this channel before, why bother participating in any paranormal ritual games? Best case scenario, nothing happens and you're bored. Worst case, something is brought back and murders you and your friends. No real good outcome, no matter how you look at it. I guess it's a test of bravery, but there has to be better ways to spend our party time than pricking our fingers and saying a dead woman's name. But what makes this worse is not just that the woman's spirit can actually be summoned, but that Sean knew this and let them all play the game anyway. He not only tried to warn his brother half-heartedly, but also immediately knew that the young campers going missing was a sign of the witch's return and called for his grandfather. If he is confident enough to know the signs of her summoning and knows that at minimum a bus of children could be in danger, he should have put in just a bit more effort to actually prevent this ritual from happening in the first place. Even if he came across as a superstitious nutjob for trying to force everyone to not summon the ghost, it would be worth it to save lives, and he can always play the I told you so card if they inevitably do summon her anyway. The way it's presented in the film seems like he honestly doesn't care about the lives of anyone outside his family. But that's for Sean at the bus. For everyone else, they just saw their friend turn killer. Since we the audience know this is the Ghost Witch's doing, that must mean she can possess people and puppet them to do her bidding. But can she just possess anyone at any time, or does she need them to be emotionally compromised, like Danny was at the time of attack? Hard to say with only one incident so far, so we will have to wait and see. For the remaining counselors, there is really nothing left to do but hunker down and wait for someone to arrive, since there's no immediate threat to anyone, from their perspective at least. Confirming Danny is dead isn't a terrible idea, but again should have been done sooner. Danny is confirmed dead as a doornail, and the group of three head south through the woods to get to Ben and Ashley. Mike, however, stupidly leaves the knife behind and Dylan pockets it. I, for one, would want to keep a weapon on me for self-defense at all times, especially if people I thought I could trust started turning into murderers. Well, Mike's loss is Dylan's gain, I guess. As they travel through the woods, Dylan tries to comfort Veronica by offering for her to use his as stress relief. How nice of him. Offended by this though, she decks him in the chest hard enough to knock the wind out of him and storms off into the woods alone. Instead of going after her to make sure she's not alone, Mike instead takes this opportunity to scold Dylan, leading to them fist fighting. Come on guys, people just died, this isn't the time for that. Their fisticuffs is interrupted by Veronica screaming, so they finally chase after her. They get to a small clearing with what appears to be jars full of blood hanging in the trees, with a sheet laid over someone or something writhing around on the forest floor. They remove the cover to find Veronica, with surgical stab marks on her limbs and face and her tongue removed. Guess the witch got her, and this means now there is truly a threat at hand we need to be on the lookout for. Back at the mess hall, Peter has given a piss-poor attempt at using the speaker system to call for the others, just saying, Ben and Ashley, please come to the mess hall immediately, instead of, saying there's been a murder and 2 people are dead. This is an emergency. Of course, with his prankster-like nature, they may not have believed him, but it's worth reporting correctly to at least try. Lauren got the medical supplies for Heather's ear, however she also stumbles upon the woman's old medical records from when she was a camper there decades ago. And those records mention dealings with a nurse named Agatha, so they confront Peter's mom with this information, who reveals she was experimented on by the nurse before she died. Good to know, but ultimately doesn't change anything about their situation. At this point, an officer shows up to investigate the call that was cut off earlier. Heather knows this cop, as he was apparently also a camper back in the day, and also experimented on by Agatha. And it must have messed him up pretty bad because as soon as he discovers they performed the ritual, he immediately wants to dip out of there. Too bad for him, his car suddenly dies. Must be the witch's doing. Dylan and Mike show up now to report that Veronica is dead. She looked very much alive, just in pain. Guess she bled out after having her tongue removed, and not like these two knew how to treat any of her wounds properly. After they show up, the pizza delivery man finally arrives. Panicking about the potential witch on the loose, the counselors rush the pizza man for help and to take them back to civilization. Jerry, however, gets them all to back off with his revolver, threatening them. After which, he arrests the pizza boy, which seems unnecessary, and commandeers his vehicle to get himself out of there. Heather begs for him to send help, but Jerry refuses to get anyone else involved as he simply drives off. Some useful officer he turned out to be, and worst of all, now they don't even get pizza for the night. We cut over to Ben and Ashley, who just finished the bunks and are returning to the mess hall when they see the little kids from the bus run past them. The children all run to a set of trees and start digging at the ground vigorously with their bare hands while chanting "Immortal Life" in Latin. Ben is freaked out, but Ashley wants to help them as something seems off. While debating over which to do, the ghost of Agatha is summoned from the earth where the children dug. But wait, if she's only just now getting summoned in a physical form, how did Veronica got back in the woods? Is there some sort of murder hobo also hanging around camp? While fleeing, Ashley trips and is swarmed by children who proceed to beat and scratch her to death. All while Ben does nothing but watches in horror. Maybe try and help her dude, punt the kids off her, or her to her feet, or drag her away from the pact. If you're not going to help, at least keep running to save yourself. Eventually, they finish her off and now aim for Ben, who finally starts to run and heads all the way back to the others outside of the mess hall, leading the demon children with him. After fighting a few off, everyone makes it inside. Dylan wants to start murdering 10-year-olds, but Heather says they are still themselves and innocent in there, just possessed. That puts Danny's murder and death in a new and very unfortunate perspective, being completely aware as he killed his crush and was stabbed to death by a former friend, helpless to stop any of it. With the kids banging on the door and everyone being reluctant to murder them, they think of an alternative. Mike and Peter will sneak out the back, with Mike using himself as bait to lure the kids around the building as Peter unlocks the loading dock doors. Mike will run through the loading area and into the basement and up the stairs back into the mess hall, while Peter closes the loading bay doors as the last kid enters, thus trapping them all inside with hopefully no casualties. The plan works almost without issue, except the kid with a broken leg fell behind the pack and now chases Peter after the others are locked in. He throws down his crutches to do so, which I guess means the possession is forcing him to run on a broken foot. Either way, Peter runs for it. Mike, meanwhile, makes it to the bottom of the basement stairs before the kids catch up with him and start thrashing his lower half. Lauren and Dylan are at the top of the steps, encouraging him to not give up, and it works, as Mike gets free and up the stairs, only for Dylan to double-cross him and deliver a kick to his face, sending him crashing back down to the little gremlins below, who proceed to shred and tear him apart, limb from limb. Wow, Dylan is a straight-up monster himself at this point. After locking the basement door, everyone heads outside to see Peter pinned by the crutches kid, when Grandpa finally arrives with a shotgun and scares the little bugger away. Not sure if that means the possessed still have self-preservation in mind, or if Agatha just didn't want to lose a puppet here. Gilbert proceeds to scold his grandson now for summoning the witch. But as Peter points out, how did his entire family know of this all being real and never telling him? We get no good explanation for them keeping this secret. Gigantic, gaping plot hole aside, at least everyone is together now, or what's left of them, and they can think of a plan to attack or escape. Gilbert explains the full story. The first summer he had opened the camp, his wife was sick with something no doctor was able to help with. A nurse, Agatha, came to the camp to assist. While treating his wife, Gilbert eventually had an affair with the caretaker, and just before his wife died too. He felt guilty enough for that already, but felt worse when he discovered Agatha was actually poisoning his wife to make sure she wouldn't get better. His response to this was to banish her from camp. Seems like kind of an underreaction. But she didn't stay banished. Agatha hid out in the woods, continuing to practice bloodletting experiments on the young campers in secret, sneaking them out after hours to perform treatments on them. This is when Heather had her run in with the nurse as a camper herself, and likely when Jerry the officer did as well. When Gilbert discovered this, he didn't just banish her this time, nor simply chase her away as the legend foretold. He hunted her down and murdered her, burying her corpse at the lowest point in camp to be as close to hell as possible. Now that seems like a proper reaction. But I guess whatever experiments Agatha was performing on those kids somehow helped bind her soul to the campsite and allows her to possess people and children to do her bidding. Still not sure how that or any of this works exactly, but at least we know what we are dealing with. The vengeful spirit of a blood witch in a reanimated body. Shouldn't be too hard to get rid of, right? Well, was there anything else we could or should have been doing up to this point? When the kids attacked, I think it would be fair game to start dropping bodies, despite their age or innocence. It's the cold logic approach for sure, but if it's our life or theirs, I say fight. If only in self-defense at the very least. Their warm logic plan to keep everyone alive was solid though, and an admirable effort was made to achieve it. If only they didn't have Dylan being a saboteur. Speaking of which, they need to kill Dylan. A member of the group that will kill, when not even doing so in any sort of cold logic way to gain an advantage, is just a psycho killer that needs to be stopped. They are clearly just looking for an excuse to kill or resolve grudges violently and are not to be trusted. I personally wouldn't even take him alive, but we could also opt for that choice if we don't want to be committing murder ourselves. Just so long as he can't harm any members of the group anymore or hinder our survival. When it comes to other plans they could take right now, why not just walk back to town? They seem hard-pressed to take the Pizza Boy's car and act like they are stranded without a working vehicle, but what's stopping them from just walking? Especially if Agatha is only tied to the campsite, meaning her spirit may not even be able to get us if we leave the immediate area. Just stick together in a group with whatever you can find as a weapon and head for the nearest town. Problem done and avoided. You could argue that the possessed children will come after us, but they still function on only what they can see and sense, as indicated by them not noticing people sneaking out the back, hiding in bushes, or them being tricked and locked in the basement. Seems they still only have all the strengths and weaknesses of a standard group of children, and could easily be avoided or fought back if needed during our on-foot escape. So let's see what our surviving counselors decide to do. And it's sitting around and doing nothing. What, did they ask the magic conch for advice or something? Lauren even notices Ben and Dylan are missing, yet everyone decides not to go looking for them. Why not? The kids are locked up and they can travel in a group. Everyone should be just as safe outside as they are indoors from a witch ghost. Not like the mess hall is on sacred ground and keeping her out or anything. Turns out Dylan was busy using Ben as a distraction by tying him to a tree in the same area they found the blood jars in earlier, next trying to make an escape afterwards. This is exactly why Dylan should have been stopped after they witnessed him murdering another counselor before. But hey, as evil and cold as this act is, at least he's doing something. After injuring Ben with a knife to give Agatha something to heal, he heads for his truck. It won't start, however, but not because of witchcraft shutting off the engine, but instead someone draining the fuel from it. One of the kids they missed from earlier now shows up with some of the missing gasoline, and he hands it over to Dylan, and by that, I mean he tosses it on him, followed by throwing a lit cigarette at him and burning him alive. Instead of taking his clothes off or stop, drop, and rolling, Dylan just flails and curses at the kid. Lauren, who seems to be the only one who cares about anyone else, runs out with a fire extinguisher. Dylan is alive still, but in so much pain that he wants to be ended. Lauren tries to get Ben's whereabouts from the suffering man, but he just gropes her breast and laughs instead. Wow, a pig to the end, and she slaughters him like one at this point. Finally deciding to do something, the group wants to hunt the hag while she has a corporeal form, so they head out for a fight. Nice to see some characters actually wanting to do something in one of these movies. Let's hope they have what it takes. The older counselors head for the beach, while the other three wander around. While doing so, they hear Ben screaming for help in the woods, and even though they think it could be a trap, Peter runs at breakneck speed towards the cries regardless. He runs neck first into a hatchet Agatha holds out from behind a tree for his trouble, and the witch runs off to leave the other two to mourn their loss. Worst of all, Ben isn't even there anymore, leaving ripped rope where he was. Down at the beach, Agatha sneaks up and takes Heather hostage. Gilbert lowers his weapon and offers his wedding ring for her life, assuming Agatha would want the symbol of loyalty and eternity he had for his wife. I guess it works, as she does let go of her in exchange for it. But surprise, it was a trick, and Lauren fires an arrow through the crone's chest. This does little to stop her though, as Agatha unfazed hatchets Gilbert and steals his gun, using it to blast his head off his shoulders. Don't know why Lauren isn't reloading and firing more arrows, but Sean shows up and beats the stripped down with the help of his mother. As they all stand over her, Lauren tries to beg for the lives of everyone lost this night. But when all she gets is cackling in response, she silences the hag with an arrow to the brain. Their next plan, and probably their smartest decision all movie, is to not only chop the witch's body up, but to tie the pieces to rocks and throw them in the lake. You may argue this is overkill, but when dealing with a supernatural entity, you can never be too safe. After disposing of the witch's remains, there is some good news. As we learn, Ben also survived, and he shows up with another police officer. Hopefully one that will actually help this time. They're going to have a lot of explaining to do, and some of those younglings might be going to prison for murder if they aren't mentally scared with the memories of ripping people apart by hand already. But other than that, it looks like the day is saved. Was there anything else we could have done though? Dylan's plan made no sense, as there was no reason to suspect Agatha would target Ben over anyone else. He should have just gone for his care, without needing to sacrifice anyone. Maybe he'd even have people there to watch his back and avoid getting burned. Don't think that was worth it just to touch a... If the rest of them were going to fight Agatha directly, why split up at all? They should each be armed with something and watching each other's backs constantly. When we see Agatha defeated later, she doesn't seem any stronger than your standard mortal human. So strength in numbers is absolutely a plus here. When we hear Ben's cries from the woods, trap or not, we should head after him. Not only could we potentially save a friend, but even if this is a trap, it would lead us to the witch we want to kill. No reason to ignore it if we are out for blood, or to rescue another. The biggest mistake they made while doing this though was running off at top speed. We need to head towards the voice, and quickly would be a bonus if we hope to save Ben, but regardless of how fast we are going, we need to get there safely. We can't help or kill anyone if we ourselves are dead, obviously. If Peter had avoided trees, stayed with the group, and traveled briskly instead of at top speed, he could have lived. The actual fight with Agatha went pretty smoothly. If we had just kept shooting her with arrows or kept a better grip on the gun while exchanging the ring, she wouldn't have been able to shoot anyone, and we probably could have popped her full of lead in return. Regardless, once defeated, separating and drowning the body was a great idea. The only thing I would add to it is leaving the parts in separate locations, just in case there is some way for them to reconnect and reform the witch. Drown some parts at opposite sides of the lake, bury some other parts at other locations on the campgrounds, and maybe burn a few other parts and spread the ashes in another location. Trying a little bit of everything with a little bit of all her things could help make certain we don't get a sequel to this thing. Lastly, I would suggest breaking all the blood jars she had hanging in the woods. Not sure if they are actually doing anything or aid in her return, but I wouldn't take a chance with it. She must have kept those jars hanging there for some reason, and I doubt it was for decoration. So destroy them, and hopefully Agatha's chance for returning is destroyed with them. So, my friends, there were some survivors, and the witch eventually wiped out, meaning this movie was beaten. However, with Ben proving they could have just escaped by foot and gone for help at any time, I wonder if we even needed to face her at all. Well, either way, I guess the woods are at least safe again. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Catching you next week. Binge another one, and peace out.